Fries were originally Frey, which was Swiss, and they came from Bern, Switzerland. I think they all came around the same period, and primarily for the free land grants. They came, I guess, 1870s. We have grub bargers coming from the Ottawa Valley up the Ottawa River, I believe, and Mattawa River. And then on my Fry side, the Nipissing Road, where my grandfather was born in Rye. And then on our Dobbs side, they come up the Old North Road from Parry Sound.
Obviously, the Fries. Who are some of the main ancestors of both of you, besides the Fries?
Well, we're Fries by marriage, but on my mother's side, Dobbs, and on Sharon's side, Dobbs. And so when we did our DNAs, which we have, we show up in each other's ancestry, family tree stuff, or DNA.
So how many generations have lived in this property of Fries, and who came before them?
Well, this would be the third generation of Fries in this house, on this property. But before that, it was Tennant's, George Tennant, and he had a brother, Richard Tennant, too, that owned a lot just back of us here. And my grandfather purchased it prior to the First World War. He was quite young. I don't know what his plans were, but he purchased this.
And the tenants that owned it, had they farmed it, or?
I believe so. There was a log house here, and, which they lived in for a few years.
And are you related to the tenants?
On my grub barger side, yes. Through my mother. My grandmother was a grub barger, Richard Grub Barger's daughter, and his parents were a tenant and a grub barger.
How about the Fries? Where did they come from?
My great-grandfather died quite young, and my grandfather was a year old roughly when he died. So she Maria Bowman, my great-grandmother, had two children then. She had a daughter and a son. So she quite quickly married a fella from Commanda, Oscar Koch, or Koch as it was, a German, K-O-C-H. And they eventually settled here across the lake, on Commanda Lake here, and raised a Cook family. They changed their name from Koch to Cook.
Interesting, the name, Frey to Fry, yeah. Koch to Cook. Interesting, yeah. The name changes that, immigrants were subject to.
And my grandfather, when he enlisted, First World War, he dropped the E.
And when your grandfather enlisted and was in England, what happened to him?
Well, he met this girl, her name was Fry. And I think that's probably what...
F-R-Y.
F-R-Y. And they married in Farnham, Surrey, in England. And he brought her back here.
Wow.
So I don't know what she thought when she arrived here in a log house.
Can you imagine?
In the bush.
Sharon, tell us about your connection and how you got here, your ancestors got here.
Oh, how my ancestors got here. Well, I was a Murphy, so my ancestors came from Ireland. And he already told you how the Dobbses came, which was, my grandmother was a Dobbs. Yeah, so.
And so most of the Murphys are settled where?
Golden Valley. There were 3 that settled in what they called Hardscrabble, and then eventually went from there to Golden Valley.
And why did they do that?
Because it was too hard to scrabble a living where they were. And my mother's dad, when he came to Golden Valley, somewhere around 1920, I'm guessing, he ended up buying property, met my grandmother, married her, bought property, and they started a tourist camp on Jack's Lake.
Oh, what was that called?
It was called Garton's Camp at that time. It's called Falcon's Lair now. My grandmother was a driver, so her family was one of the original ones, my dad's mother.
Also to Golden Valley?
Yep. Okay. So I have the drivers and the Dobbses.
Interesting.
And then on my mother's side, her dad was not from this area originally. He was from the St. Thomas area.
The Dobbses They came here in 1856. We
Oh.
found their shipping list and how they arrived at New York.
Oh.
And their destination was Canada West, they called it at that time. So they had a plan to get to Ontario back then. And they lived 20 years, roughly, in southern Ontario before they came to Golden Valley. William Dobbs, his name was, when he came, he had, I think it was 4 children then. And one died on the trip. And my great-grandfather George was 3. So they eventually had 14 kids. And he brought a child from his previous marriage. His first wife died. So he had 15 kids.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of them were young when they come to Golden Valley, just children. They came up to Collingwood and came on the Wabano steamship to Parry Sound, and then up by horse or oxen to Golden Valley. And the Wabano sank on the next trip. It's documented in my great-grandfather's obituary.
Wow.
So, and there's a lot of history on that. You can look that up on the internet. It's
Interesting.
that boat. There's a lot of families came on that boat.
Tell us about your house that we're in right now.
Well, it was built in 1927. My grandfather cut the wood here on the property, and his half-brother Lawrence Cook had a sawmill across the lake, and they milled it and then drew it by horses to Commanda, to McLaughlin's mill, and made all the flooring, the tongue and groove ceilings, the fancy trim works, all made in Commanda, yeah.
When we were here interviewing your father, you showed us some really interesting family belongings like coats and that kind of stuff. And you just found that in the various locations on the property, is that right?
In the attic, and trunks. We've got 3 trunks here that are full of stuff that's been there for years.
Wow.
It's my grandparents' coats, and that's some sort of a sheep's wool.
I'm gonna leave him to do
But this is bearskin gauntlets and the coat. And according to Dad, that's what they wore on the cutter in the winter.
Oh my goodness.
But there's the coat. It's all bearskin. Heavy. Kind of toxic in here though. Yeah, there's the 2 mitts.
Wow.
And those are doeskin. Feel us off there.
Oh.
This says 1846 almanac on the front, so it's 1840s. My great-great-grandfather wrote his memoirs. You see Lincolnshire,
Used to be outside.
May 4th, 1820, that's his birth date.
I don't recall.
William Dobbs, his name. 1885, the Dobbs, and this is Maria Dobbs, that's my great-grandmother.
Talking about finding things when we were renovating, though, there was a lot of kind of neat stuff. I was tearing up the kitchen floor, which had tile on it. We wanted to see if there was hardwood, and there was, but underneath all the linoleum and, and the tile and the linoleum were newspapers, and there were some from 1954, and so we kept a few of them, yeah, with all the neat stories, and that's when they would have renovated that part, I suppose.
And there was a footprint appeared on the
yeah.
floor, like a sweaty foot that had stepped there before they put the flooring down. It just appeared.
And then disappeared. I figured his grandmother was here.